Let's go into primitive reflexes and what they mean. Has a big thing to do with children, childhood developmental disorders, anything in behavioral disorders, big time with kiddos. These are the guys we're looking for. This is the foundational one, especially for kids that we're looking at is primitive reflexes. So this first part, we got to just talk about what primitive reflexes, what it means, all right? So when you look at primitive, that just means older. Think about animals and how they react. That's more primitive. They can't control their reactions. It's almost like if you scare them, they're either going to bite you or they're going to run away. That is a primitive reflex, not something that they have good control over. All of these reflexes, which are natural reactions, they all occur in this brainstem area right here. Okay, this brainstem area has to do with survival, right? So that's all it cares about is, hey, I need to either run away from this thing or I need to fight it and kill it, otherwise I could die. So like that's all that brainstem area cares about, and that's where these primitive reflexes originate. And they should be with every young kiddo as an infant, and that's what helps them develop how to move and develop all their movement patterns and how to move their head, how to move their arms and their legs, and all these things all originate in this brainstem area. These primitive reflexes, or these older reactions that we can't control, this is what a reflex is. It's kind of like when I hit your kneecap and you kick your foot. That's a reflex too. Another name for it is frontal release signs. All right, people with strokes, some of these primitive reflexes come back because they've had a stroke to an area of their cortex, or this area of the brain up here that we can actually control. It's like thinking, our ability to control movement, our ability to feel sensations. That is this cortex area up here. So whenever they say their frontal release signs, what they're talking about is this area right here. This area right here, whenever it gets hurt or damaged or isn't developed enough, as in used enough as a kiddo with these primitive reflexes, then these start showing back up. So this area right here goes down and helps one to be able to control those primitive reflexes, so you're not always being reactive, or you're not always being angry, or you're not always having to bite someone's head off or run away from them. So it helps the person be able to control their emotions and control their movements, pretty much control their reflexes that are instilled in us in order to be able to survive. So once again, brainstem, that's more survival stuff. Now when we get up here, now that's our ability to think, to control, to rationalize, right? And the healthier this area is, the more it can shut down this area, so someone's not always either in fight or flight response. Let's see. Another thing to note about these reflexes, I think it's important for teachers, practitioners, also caretakers and parents to understand that a lot of these things that kids are doing, they're not doing it on purpose. It is literally a reflex. So if you can understand that fact, that's going to help you better be able to rationalize and understand what they're doing, and take a little bit of less stress off of you and help with the understanding of it all. What we're going to dive into next is all the different types of primitive reflexes, how we test them, what kind of common symptoms kids have, and then obviously what we do to treat it here at the office that seems to work the best to, one, fix the primitive reflex, and two, make their frontal cortex, that area of the brain, work better. Because whenever we're looking at this area of the brain, once this area of the brain works good, then we can move complexly with multiple body parts and do complex things. And then after that comes the ability to think complexly, rationalize, the ability to do problem solving, mathematics, and all that other fun stuff. So stay tuned. Next primitive reflex we're going to talk about is the spinal galant reflex. With this one, once again, it's present in utero, and it's said to assist the kid's development or kid's ability to get out of the birth canal with the stimulation of this reflex. It helps to move the hips and get the hips moving to work its way down the canal, birth canal. This should be integrated at 9 months old. We look at it as how we test it, and how we look at it is anything that touches or just skims across the back, these big back muscles, it's going to elicit a response that has to do with the hips and the body kind of side bending like this. With this one, we have its main thought is that it helps build the control, the initial control of the back and the hips in order to move those separate whenever we begin crawling and walking. So when we're looking at that, common symptoms have to do with bedwetting. That's the biggest one, bladder control, but also the inability to sit still, or they're constantly having to fidget or move. With clothes, they tend to like baggy clothes because tight clothes can stimulate that reflex on their back. Sitting against a chair in a classroom can stimulate that reflex, so they always are constantly fidgeting and moving. Another one that is said to be developed with this reflex is auditory processing, and that's where they could have a difficulty with hearing and auditory processing whenever it comes to hearing tests and stuff like that as they age. What we'll go over next is how we like to test it, and then specific treatment strategies to get rid of it. One of the best ways I've found to test for the spinal galant reflex is you place the kid or the adult on all fours, and then what you do with a light paintbrush or even just your finger is you're going to stroke down this big back muscle and even a little bit to the side. And what you're looking for, here, turn this way, what you're looking for is for the hips to bend and the trunk to bend towards the direction. So if it was on the right side, you would see bending this way, and then they come back bending this way, and then come back. It almost looks like they're ticklish, but that is actually a reflex. So you're stroking down the side of the back, and you're looking for the bend like this. And if you do the other side, it'll bend the other way. And you're looking for the hips to move towards that side and the back to bend towards that side. If that is there, this primitive reflex is still present. Let's talk about getting rid of this reflex. So if this reflex is present, the child does not have the volitional control over these big backstrap looking muscles on the back and the hips. They don't have volitional control, or they're not able to move those volitionally because it's all reflexive. So what we want to do is we want to gain control over those big back muscles and the hips. And the two exercises that work the best for me at my practice to get rid of this reflex is first the Superman. Once again, you're laying on your stomach, chin is tucked, and you have to be lifting your hips up and your arms up. And I even like to fly to the side, fly to the other side, and go back and forth. But you really want to make sure that they're feeling the muscles work in their back, and you want to hold that for a variety of time. And you can change it up by bending to the side and bending to the side. So once again, it's just volitionally gaining the control to do that movement. The next one for the spinal galant is to get the back of the hips moving. Once again, my favorite one for this is the crab walk. And you want to walk opposite arm, opposite leg, and you want to have them hold it up there because it engages the back of the hips and the back of the arms. Boom, step, boom, and you can go forwards and backwards. So with these two, classically I'll have them rotate between the Supermans and then the crab walks, and I'll have them do that numerous times in a row. You can do 3 or 4 rounds of that, and doing it multiple times throughout the day. Within a short amount of time, that reflex will be integrated, and that will resolve a lot of their symptoms if this reflex is present with them, and that's where the testing comes in.